You're watching the PIC TV network.
Welcome to the importance and power of reading. I'm Michelle, the computer lady, your host. During some awful dark times in America, Black people were denied the ability to read, to learn how to read, to write, or to even own books. And that has hampered our communities up until this day. Now we're going to have important conversations about the importance and power of reading.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this new segment on the importance and power of reading. We all know and we want to engage our children so they know how important it is on their journey to success in life. Today, I have an amazing and brilliant doctor. Everybody, I want to introduce to you Dr. Farmer. Dr. Farmer, oh, it's so amazing. I'm glad you blessed us with this interview. Would you tell everybody out in the world a little bit about who you are?
Hi, thank you so much, Michelle, for inviting me. It's an honor to be here, to be able to sit here in your presence and with your guests to share a little bit about myself. I am Dr. Tonia Farmer. I'm a board certified ear, nose, and throat surgeon. So I specialize in I pretty much say I specialize between the shoulders and the brain. Anything in between is what I do. I specialize in ear, nose, and throat. I've been practicing in private practice here in Ohio, in the Midwest, for 22 years now. So I am in private practice, and I own my practice. I own an outpatient surgery center as well, where I do the majority of my surgeries. Most of what I do, I have a heavy focus and interest in all things sinus, allergy, anything related to the nose. I do a lot of thyroid disease. I also have a large population of head and neck cancer patients. And I also see children. So I have a big pediatric practice where I'm primarily taking care of tonsils and adenoids and tubes and allergies and sinuses and things like that for kids, and usually benign neck masses and things like that. So I got into medicine when I was 7 years old. So since I was 7 years old, I knew I wanted to be a doctor at the age of 7. But my introduction into medicine was not a pleasant one. It was a very difficult time in my life, but one in which I used it as the wind beneath my wings to propel me forward. But at the age of 7, my twin sister, I had a twin sister, my twin sister, Sonia, was diagnosed with metastatic bone cancer. And she went on to have a full leg amputation. She went on to have surgery to have parts of her lungs removed when the cancer spread. And at the age of 9, she was healed in heaven of her cancer. And it was at that time that I announced to everyone, to my mom, that I'm going to be a doctor.
That is amazing.
Absolutely amazing. They were amazing. I say they took care of not just my sister and her illness, but they took care of us as a family. They showed empathy and kindness and love to us as a family, and especially recognized me as the sister, the twin sister. So I can remember walking around with my little stethoscope on in the hospital. You know, her treatment was at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at CHOP, an amazing institution. And those doctors just took to us and took to me, and we could do this back in the day. Nowadays, you wouldn't be able to do this, but I remember going around in the hospital with them and rounding, and I just was introduced to that at such a young age. And even though it was a very painful time in my life, out of it came the.
That is what a wonderful story. I can imagine you being there as a
Medicine.
youngster.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now I got a few questions for you.
Okay.
One, did you like reading as a child?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I did. As a youngster, I absolutely loved it. My mom really encouraged it. She really encouraged it. So reading was something that I always did from a very young age. From a very young age. Yeah.
Cool beans. So you said that your mom encouraged it. So she would be your major influence into your journey into reading.
Yes, she was. My mom was always about academics. She was always about, doing your best, reading proficiently, and writing. She was one of those moms where, if your homework was not written out neatly, she had that big giant eraser and she would erase it, and make you redo it because it had to be neat, and she was that way about reading. Even outside of school, like over the summertime, she would actually give me assignments, like, where I had to read a book and then I had to write a summary of the book. And that included drawing a cover page on the report. So these were things that my mom did to encourage me to read at such a young age. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I'll never forget. It was like it was yesterday, a book I read about koala bears. I see the cover, like literally, I see it right now, the cover that I drew of this report that I wrote about koala bears. But that was the norm over the summertime. Even though it was the summer, you still had reading assignments that I had to do.
Wow, what a great mom and what a great way to make sure kids read. Now, what was your favorite book as a child?
Wow, that's difficult, my like an absolute favorite. I can't say that I had an absolute favorite, but I loved books that were about animals. That's why I would always pick things like koala bears. It was interesting to me just to learn about just what they were, what they did, different features of them, So that as a young kid, it was probably books more so about animals. And then when I got into school, I had an English teacher and I always did well academically. I can say that I was blessed in that I excelled academically. So I was usually placed in like honors classes. And I'll never forget this one teacher, an English teacher that I had. Oh, I see her face. I see her whole, just her style, how she dressed. And she introduced me to Toni Morrison, right? And I think I don't know if it was because my name, everybody calls me Toni, and then Toni Morrison, and she suggested Toni Morrison. And I had never heard of Toni Morrison at that time, but she introduced this author. We had to choose an author who we wanted to learn about and read their books. And she was the one who introduced me to Toni Morrison. So then I would start reading, Toni Morrison books. But even as a youngster, I didn't find that her books were very easy to read, at all. But as I got into high school, I came to appreciate her style more, but as an author, yeah.
I got to meet Dr. Morrison at the Bread and Roses Award at SUNY
Oh,
Albany years and
wow.
years ago.
Oh,
And so
wow.
she's a
That's
very fascinating
amazing.
woman. I had read The Bluest Eye, and then she had come out with Beloved. So
Mhm.
really, really, that's an awesome author. So what are you reading right now? Besides all your medical journals and all the things that you have to do for work, what are you reading for pleasure?
So one of the books that I just started reading is called The Sun Does Shine. No, The Sun Does Rise. Sun Does Rise by Anthony Ray Hinton. Have you ever heard of Anthony Ray Hinton at all?
Yes, I have. So
Okay.
this has to be that's a really it's deep, but it actually has some really fun and funny points to it.
Right, it does. So I had the pleasure of meeting him. For those who don't know, he served about 30 years in prison for murders that he did not commit at all. And he was released. But it talks about his journey um, of acceptance, maybe. It talked about his ability to overcome some anger because his first few years in prison were filled with anger, but then he was able to use that anger and to turn it into a way of, I have to survive. I have to survive this, So it's an amazing, I haven't gotten through it all, but that's what I'm reading right now. And he was an amazing man to meet. He was here in Youngstown, Ohio, because every year, we have the Ohio Nonviolence Week that is in October. We celebrate, and the Sojourner group had him here as a guest, and he received the Simeon Booker Award for Courage. And so he was the guest speaker, and it was amazing to meet him and to have him sign, the book, and have my girls meet him as well. We belong to Jack and Jill of America Incorporated, and so we went and presented him, with a gift from the Youngstown chapter here. And so it was amazing to have my girls also meet him. And what we did was we assigned that book. This is how important it is with reading. We assigned that book to our teens, because there's actually a young reader's edition of that book, of his book. So we assigned that book to our teens to read.
That is amazing. And you're a part of Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill is an amazing organization. Now I want you to hold that right there. We've got to take a small
Okay.
commercial break, and we're going to be right back. Everybody, Dr. Farmer, don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
Since 1877, Jackson State University has been training students for a life of service and leadership to impact our global society. Ranked among the best HBCUs in the country, Jackson State University offers 47 undergraduate, 37 master's, 1 specialist, and 13 doctoral degree programs. Whether you're interested in the arts, education, public health, the sciences, or business, we're here to take you from ready to JSU ready. Visit jsums.edu and apply today.
Are you a company, business, or service that believes in social responsibility? Would you like to make a positive impact? You can. You can sponsor this program and be seen by 2 million viewers on the PIC TV network. Call 770-367-1268 for more information today.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're back with the amazing Dr. Farmer. She's an ENT, and she was telling us about this wonderful, amazing author. Dr. Farmer, I'm so glad that you're sharing what you're reading. This way, other people can go and see exactly how great this book is. And
Yes.
this story is phenomenal about a man that had been in prison 30 years on crimes that he didn't commit, and how he got over the anger and got a place to love. And then when he got out, he's doing some amazing things. Now,
Right.
we talked about your favorite books. Do you think having books in the home for children is a way that we can make sure that they read better? What are your views
Oh,
on that?
absolutely. Absolutely, I do. I think having books that are in the home, and a variety, different genres of books. Like I know my girls, when they were younger, they loved, they're not called picture books. What are they called? Where it's the,
Graphic
oh, what did they
novels?
call them? Yes, but it was like almost cartoonish, almost like a cartoon, but it was a story that you would read. Um, they absolutely
Those are
love
picture
those
books.
books. Yeah, they absolutely love those books, because not only did you have the story, but you had the visual, that went with it. So having books in the house, it also, I believe, not only does it improve your ability to read, but it also improves your creativity. It just opens your mind to so much creativity. It takes you on a whole nother world. Like you can just lose yourself in a whole nother world, absolutely.
So you have children. How many? And
I
are
have
they
three
boys and girls?
I have three girls. I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
So are they aspiring to be a doctor like you?
So the oldest has announced that, which I'm going to be honest with you. I do not push my girls into medicine. I don't. No one in my family is in medicine. no physicians or anything like that. My journey into medicine was because of a defining moment in my life, right? So I tell my girls that I don't push them into medicine because my story is not their story. Now, if they find the desire to want to go into medicine, then I will be a happy mama. I will be a happy mama to have another doctor in the family. But my oldest has expressed an interest to go into medicine, and she's expressed an interest in going into the field of ENT or going into the field of anesthesia. And I think that that all goes back to having exposure, right? It's just like having kids have exposure to books. If you expose children to books early on, I believe that it's going to increase their love for books and their desire to want to read books, right? With that exposure. My oldest daughter, Sonia, she named after my sister, Sonia, she has been exposed to ear, nose, and throat, of course, because her mom's an ENT doctor. But because I own a surgery center, as part of a project for school that she was doing, she had the opportunity to actually come into the operating room with me. So she was able to see what I do. And it also exposed her to my nurse anesthetist who puts patients to sleep. And so that exposed her to anesthesia. So when she announced ENT or anesthesia, I said, this is all about exposure. Like, how wonderful if we could just expose our kids to, all of these things, but kids don't always have the opportunity to be exposed, right? But it's the same thing with reading. If we expose our kids to those opportunities, imagine the opportunity that will open for them, the doors that will open for them.
Oh, most definitely. And that takes us to our next question. As a professional, as a doctor, as a scientist, how has reading helped you on your journey and in your career?
Oh, there's hands down. I mean, I wouldn't be able to learn anything that I have learned without having a detailed understanding of vocabulary, right? When you go to medical school, you're going to learn a whole new vocabulary, right? You're going to learn some words that you're like, is that a word? Like, where did that come from, right? So having that basic knowledge, of word structure, pronunciation, all of that is so very important to be able to take you into maybe the next level, of being able to understand words that you might look at and be like, I have no idea. But you know what? If I break this word down, then maybe now it makes sense. So having that basic understanding of reading, is so very important to really help me to get a grasp on just the whole field of ENT. And it's not just ENT, it would be any field that you would go into, right? Is that you have to have that understanding. That makes me think about cursive, cursive reading, right? These days, our kids don't read cursive very well.
Well, when we were in school, we had to practice cursive writing and we had to practice diction and learning
Right,
new words.
right,
So I don't know what they're doing. And I went to Catholic school. I had a chance to go to private school for a while because my mom
yeah,
was very insistent on us making sure that we had the proper educational levels so we
right,
would have a good life. She's really
right.
big on education. Like I told you, my mom's a nurse. Well,
Uh-huh.
rest her soul, she's in heaven now, but she nursed for over 40 years. My great
Sure.
aunt Leanna was a nurse midwife. And so
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons that she really pushed academics. So
But
now
these days,
what I tell my
they don't
grandkids is,
teach it. They don't teach
and that's
it,
why we have to
you
do it
know.
at home.
Right.
We have to do it at home. We have to,
Exactly.
but
And let
my,
me say, this is one of the reasons why, like, I'm going to give you this cute example. Recently, my girls received a card from an aunt of theirs, right? They all three got a card, and the card was written in cursive. It was like a blank card that you write in, and it was all written in cursive, but it had money in it. It had money in the card as well, right? So they come to me because they have no idea what it says. they have no idea who it's from because they can't read cursive, at all. So that was like amazing. Like, how do you not know what this says? How do you, because they don't learn cursive. So I told my aunt, I said, I want keep writing in cursive. I'm going to keep writing in cursive because it's the only way that they're going to learn. It's the only way.
Absolutely. And we used to get points for penmanship. You remember that? We would get
Oh,
our gold stars for
oh, oh,
penmanship.
oh, absolutely. That's why, like I said, my mom was that type of mom that if she couldn't read your homework or if she thought it wasn't neat enough for the teachers, she erased the whole page and you had to do your homework all over again. So what kind of mama you think I am? What kind of mama you think I did with my kids? I did the exact same thing. I got that big eraser also.
I love it. I love it. Now, speaking of them not learning cursive and other things that they might not being taught in school, what do you think the status of literacy is for our young adults, our
Yeah.
adolescents, and our kids in the United States? And what can we do about it?
Unfortunately, I will say, especially because of the pandemic, it has severely put our kids behind, right? Because let me tell you why. This is what I observe. I'm just going to tell you what I've observed from my own kids. When they were virtual and online, for all of that time, you know, they had the choice to either read, like, because everything was online, the information would come across the screen. They had the choice to either read it or they could push a button and it could be read for them, right? So more often than not, they want to just push the button and just sit back and just let it be read for them, right? So if you do that, you're not able to read, right? You can't. You're not. It's just you're just sitting there just reading. I mean, listening to someone read it for you versus you read it yourself. So I do think because of the pandemic, it has put our kids way, way, way behind, way behind.
And I'm going to
Unfortunately.
agree with you on that. Now, everybody in TV land, we're going to take a small commercial break and we're going to be right back with Dr. Farmer as we discuss the importance and power of reading. Stay tuned. Watch the PIC TV network on YouTube. Hi, everybody. It's Michelle, the computer lady with Cellbotics. I would like to teach you 8 ways to get paid. Have you been worrying or in your head about AI and what it's going to do to the industry or what it's doing to jobs? Well, as a computer repair technician, as an analyst, as a specialist, that's not something that you'll have to be concerned with. Number one, by 2025, there are going to be over 25 billion devices in use. That's right, 25 billion with a B. And there's always going to be someone that needs an upgrade or repair, maintenance, because every 7 to 10 minutes, a device is getting broken. So that means you have cell phones, tablets, workstations, desktop, laptops, servers, and printers that will have to be maintained. And there's a myriad other ways to make money in this industry. Really, it won't let AI take what you have. Instead, you can be in an industry that is AI proof. Come to Cellbotics and let me teach you 8 ways to get paid. Wow, we're having an amazing conversation with Dr. Farmer, an ENT out of Ohio. She has her own private practice, and we're having this amazing conversation as we get into why our kids not reading. And she talked about COVID and how,
Yeah.
because of virtual learning, kids were just going through the motions. They would cut on the homework and let it read to them.
Yep.
And so part of reading, it helps with our neuroplasticity. It helps
Yep.
us to remember when we're reading, when we're actually engaged. And I'm glad you brought that point up, Dr. Farmer. Now, as a parent of girls, how did you make sure that your children were reading well and on grade level?
Well, it really all has to do with engagement. And I think that as parents, we have to be engaged in what our children are doing academically. It's easy to just sit back and, okay, they're doing their work, they're doing their homework, or whatever. It's easy to do that, but you have to be engaged. You have to sometimes even take the time to just sit there and listen to them, like read out loud. Let me hear you read out loud. So I can know that you really understand, what you're reading, right? So you have to do that. And I will say, I think the pandemic really made me be more conscious about that, because when my kids had to transition and had to get used to, especially my middle child had a hard time transitioning into being on the computer, right? She's more in person, sit down, be more social, interactive with the teacher than on a computer. So that day I'll never forget when I saw, and it was like, push the button, it's reading to you. What? Wait a minute, So it made me become more conscious that no, I have to be more engaged. So I think that as parents, we do. I know everybody's busy. We have our own things that we're doing sometimes, and especially for me with my schedule as a physician, but we really have to be intentional. We have to be intentionally engaged in our kids' education to know exactly what they're reading, because unfortunately, sometimes the there are going to be some who are in the schools who don't really give your kids that time. So whether they're reading well or not, it's not going to matter. They just push them on to the next grade, right? So as parents, we have to be the ones who are our kids' advocates to make sure that they are getting what they need, that they're learning what they need, and they're doing it not just proficiently, but exceptionally. Okay, exceptionally.
Yes, that point right there. Now,
Yep.
Dr. Farmer, I also find, and I know you don't have boys, but I find that with boys, they
Hmm.
tend to not read as much as girls, because girls, a lot of times we can quiet our mind, we can get in a
Right.
quiet space. That's the way we're culturated.
Right.
My thing is, how can we get young boys to read more,
Right.
read better, and be more proficient in their reading and comprehension? What do you think?
I'll give you one example of something that I thought was wonderful. The pastor at my church, Pastor Todd Johnson at Second Baptist Church here in Warren, Ohio, he started a reading club for boys, only for boys. And it's called Boys Can Read. He started this club, and I thought, that's wonderful, but it's just for boys, right? But when you talk about exactly what you said, that our boys tend to be a bit behind our girls with reading, it makes sense. It specifically targets these young men, young boys, starting them at a younger age, where they're able to select books that they want to read. They do activities together. It's also a bonding opportunity, and it's a way in a group setting to show that, guess what, this isn't something that we making fun of you reading, no, they're all there together. They're trying to learn together how to read, and you have these male figures who are mentoring these young boys and really encouraging them to read. So I think if we had more opportunities and more groups like that, whether we start in our churches, whether we start in our groups like Jack and Jill, or, even in some of our schools where we really have to be intentional about targeting these young boys. But I think that's an amazing opportunity of how we can really encourage and get our boys at the same level, get them up to the same level with reading.
Well, you tell your pastor I said, way to go and thank you, because as a
Yeah.
children's book author, and I have a son and two daughters, but they're all grown and I have grandchildren,
Uh-huh.
I know how challenging it can be for boys to read because they want to go out and play. They want to explore the world. They want to hunt and gather and throw
Right.
rocks. And to get them to quiet the mind can be
Right.
challenging for young boys. So that is amazing. When you see your pastor, you
I
tell
will.
him that Michelle, the computer lady, says, way to go and thank you so very, very much for that.
I will.
Now, what guidance would you give parents of both boys and girls
Mhm.
on how to make sure that their children are reading well and have a diverse reading and vocabulary and comprehension level?
Mhm. You know what? It's funny. When I think about that, it's like, how can we, regardless of what age they're in, how can we know that our children are at the levels that they need, them to be in? And, maybe a couple ways that I can think of. Number one is to actually have conversations with our children, right? Like actually have sit down, put the electronics down. Let's just sit and have a conversation, because the quality of that conversation can also be a good indicator as to how they're able to read, right? That they're able to string words together, their grammar, right? All of that they're able to have those types of conversations. For our little kids, listen, my mama knew what she was doing during the summer. Look, do some assignments. They can be engaged in it too. They can choose what book they want, just like I chose the koala bear book. Right? So they can choose. Give those assignments, even if it's an award system or something pleasurable, that, or they want to go to some place, or they're looking forward to maybe getting something special that they would like. Okay, well, let's get this report done, right? And then you read that report. You literally read that report and go through it with the kids. That's what my mom did, right? We need to bring that back, bring that back, but be intentional about that. And then also look for opportunities that might be there in school, in church, where there are reading groups. Get our kids. There's book clubs for kids that you can engage your kids into book clubs, right? So that's a way that we can try to be intentional about knowing. And then third, I would say we also have to be engaged with our kids when it comes to school. Like, get into the schools, go to the school, talk to the teachers. I will say sometimes I'm guilty of this. I admit it, that sometimes when they have the parent teacher meetings, I don't always go, because they'll say, we have a certain number of slots. If you have any concerns about your child, then you don't have to come in. But if you do have some concerns, and I'll be like, well, I don't have no concerns. They're doing good. They're excelling in school. So I don't have any concerns. So I don't need to make that meeting, right? Well, no, we should. We should go in and say, because guess what? What I see may not be exactly what's happening, right? So go in and sit down and say, how is my child doing? Is there any way that they can improve, in their reading or their writing, or whatever? I also will ask my kids, what if they had like a writing assignment, or something like that. I'll say, let me see it. Let me actually review it. Let me read it, and go over it, because that's a way that I can also teach them here in the home. So there's multiple ways that we can make sure that our kids are at the level that they need to be in. Because listen, nowadays, oh my gosh, Michelle, they have so many things now out there, that they now got AI, where all you got to do is type in what you want and it will spit out a whole report for you, right? It blows my mind, the stuff that they have. They have apps these days now where you can just go to the app and it'll just write it for you. Like, It blows my mind. So we do have to really be engaged with our kids and be intentional. I keep using those two words, engaged and intentional. That's how important it is with our kids to make sure that they're really, really, really learning what they need to, because there's so many crutches. Yeah, I'm going to call them crutches. There's so many crutches nowadays with technology and the advancements in technology that we ain't have back in the day. We ain't have all that, but they have it now.
When I was coming up, we didn't even have a computer. I'm going to date myself. That's why the kids call me grandma in
Look,
technology.
I tell my kids, they're like, Mommy, how do you know the letters on the keyboard so you're not doing this? Right. And I said, because when I went to high school, it was this kind of typewriter. Like you know,
Old electron, the old
the old
IBM
fashioned,
electronics.
right?
They don't
Right.
get it. They don't get it. But at the end of the day, I'm happy for some of the technology, but we have to
Yeah,
make sure that our kids are totally engaged,
correct.
because the easy way, and what they'll find out when they get to a job or they try to get into their career, they will be way behind the curve because they didn't do the basics.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Now, because we're both in STEM, I'm in IT, you're a doctor, you're in the sciences, I'm in technology. How can we have a conversation with the parents, and we are engaging with them right now, on
Hmm.
how we can get our kids learning STEM, science,
Hmm.
technology, engineering, and math,
Yeah.
and the ways that we can expose them so they can have that thirst for learning these vast and complex subjects?
Yeah. I think it really boils down to, you have to make it interesting and you have to make it fun, for the kids. If you say STEM to a kid, they're like, oh, like they may think that it's boring, but nowadays, like for instance, with kids, like I'll use my kids as an example, right? Well, guess what's part of STEM is also like computer coding, right? Video games, right? So you got to kind of see where your child is, what interests them, and how you can kind of relate STEM to that, because STEM covers so many aspects that you can find a way to make it fun, for your kids. Like my kids, they like video games. They like being on Minecraft. They like being on all those different sites and stuff. Well, guess what? You can learn how to code. You can make a game your own self, and do it your own self. When it came to, my kids also have the advantage of me being a physician and owning my own practice, that I can take my kids to the operating room. I can show them, I can introduce them to different fields. I have a friend, a dermatology friend in Toledo, who said, hey, anytime your daughter wants to come, she can come to my practice and hang out with me. Guess what? She's going to get exposed to dermatology, So I think you have to make it fun. You have to find out what it is that really interests your child. And then, okay, how can I kind of translate that into STEM and find a way that just get your foot in the door with them, a little bit with STEM.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. And the other thing is, everything, as Dr. Farmer said, around us is STEM. How plants grow, how to
Hmm.
cook, recipes,
Yeah.
how things are made, how things are put together. And so
You can
it's just
so
about
many
aligning
things.
them. Yeah, just about aligning them where they are in order to bring them into this wonderful world. Now, she talked about video games. And just so you know, I have a friend, hey, Hong, wherever you are, work for EA Sports. He went from, because we were both computer technicians, he went from that, he went into coding, but he learned to read to do it.
Hmm.
And Hong makes a lot of money, and he doesn't work that hard either. So that's why the reading journey is so important. Dr. Farmer, as you can see, these 30 minutes go by quick and fast.
Fast.
I want to take this time to thank you for, number one, working with me through all the technical difficulties we had today coming on. Number two,
Absolutely.
for doing amazing work as an
Thank you.
ENT,
Thank you so
and
much.
for raising some amazing children. Thank you so much for being here with us on the importance and power of reading. And before we go, Do you have any last words for any parents out there that might have a child that's struggling to read?
Yeah. I would say keep going. It's, right. Sometimes when you're in that struggle, it's hard to see past the struggle. But I truly believe that there's purpose in the struggle. There is a purpose, and so just keep pushing through, have the patience, to push through that struggle, to know that once that light bulb comes on, oh man, a whole world is opened up. That's how it was with during the pandemic and being online. Oh man, I said my middle child, she almost didn't make it. She with her life, with me and her struggling, right? But we pushed through, and once that breakthrough came, it was amazing. It was amazing. It was.
Well, Dr. Farmer, again, thank you for being with us on the importance and power of reading.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody, this was another rousing segment on the importance and power of reading. Now, I want everybody to take the time to make sure, like Dr. Farmer said, we engage with our children, we see what they're doing. Make time for those parent-teacher association meetings. If you're not in Jack and Jill, that might be a great organization. And also look for book clubs that help our children to make sure that they're reading. Dr. Farmer told you about one that is in her area with her pastor, Boys Can Read. And we want to say thank you very much to that pastor. He's doing amazing work. We'll catch you on the next segment of the importance and power of reading. I'm Michelle, the computer lady, and we'll see you soon.
You know what's going on in our society, book banning, and over 38 million children don't have books in their homes. Join me for some exciting segments as we talk about the importance and power of reading with my guest, Jay Nolan, CEO XP Mentor, former MLB baseball player on the Pick TV network.